So, did Lionsgate actually close, like the portal? Because August 8th came and went, and it seems like we all manifested abundance, wrote 888 in our journal, probably charged some things under the moonlight. And honestly, I think someone left the door open because 4 days later, on August 12th, which is tomorrow, there are some crazy stuff happening, okay? There's a six planet parade, there's a meteor shower, there's a new moon in Leo, and a solar eclipse. And like everything, like all these things are lining up, okay? And then naturally, the internet has decided it's either the most spiritually powerful day of the century, a sign that gravity is gonna temporarily disappear, or the opening scene of like an apocalypse movie. So none of those things are true, but the actual story involves celestial clickbait, an eclipse that would have once caused a king to hire his own sacrificial replacement, a martyred saint who apparently got cooked on a grill, and a comet more than twice the size of the one blamed for killing the dinosaurs. So honestly, we do not need to exaggerate. August 12th is already messy enough. Welcome back to Delusional Witch Juice, the podcast where I look at hidden history, the facts behind folklore, and the mysteries of the metaphysics. And today I am going to be your skeptical, but absolutely still gonna go look outside at the sky tomorrow night type friend. And today we are doing something a little different. Consider this as your kind of celestial gossip column or gossip podcast for the day. We're going to talk about who's attending, who's actually connected, who's pretending to be more important than they are, and which astronomical event has somehow hired an ancient Mesopotamian body double. So let's discuss like it's a Bravo reunion, okay? So, according to the headlines and the internet, like everywhere, August 12th has four major events happening. There's going to be a six planet parade, a new moon, and the peak of the Perseids meteor shower. But first, I'm here to tell you some tea. They are not actually four separate events. So, the new moon and the solar eclipse arrive together, and this is going to blow your mind. It's shocking, honestly, but they are a couple, they share an invitation. A solar eclipse can only happen during a new moon because it's when the moon passes between the sun and the earth. I know. It seems like it should be common sense, right? So everybody freaking out that there's a solar eclipse and a new moon, like of course, duh. And then most months, the moon's orbit carries it slightly above or below the sun from our viewpoint. But when the geometry lines up closely enough, the moon shadow falls across part of the Earth. So that's the basic definition of an eclipse. So the new moon is not an additional celestial emergency. It's the reason the eclipse is happening in the first place. Then, the second, the planetary alignment is being slightly dramatic about its job title, okay? The planets are not forming a perfect line in space. They are not gathering for a ritual. They are not combining their gravitational powers like the Planeteers or something. They simply appear to be spread across the same general path in our sky because the planets orbit the sun roughly at the same flat plane. Shocking, I know. But from Earth, that path is called an ecliptic. Basically, the planets are traveling on the same celestial highway. And on August 12th, several of them just happen to be visibly traveling along different parts of the same highway at the same time. So, is that cool? Absolutely. But is the universe trying to organize like some sort of hostile takeover? No. So, already, two members of this supposedly unpredictable cosmic gathering have been caught padding the guest list. So, but let's start with the very beginning of the day. So, before sunrise on August 12th, Jupiter, Mercury, Mars, Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune will be spread across the morning sky. And I want to emphasize the word spread. they're not gonna look like 6 evenly spaced out dots in a tiny little row. This is a wide arc stretching from the eastern horizon to the southwest. And Mars and Saturn should be the easiest to see. We can typically see them on in the evenings anyway. Mercury will be low near the horizon, and Jupiter will be bright but extremely low in the morning. And Uranus will require binoculars, and Neptune will definitely require a telescope. So I think it's just funny because this means that the viral graphics showing 6 enormous glowing planets all lined up in the sky like they're posing for like a family photo is shockingly not accurate. I want you to notice also missing from this parade of planets is Venus. And Venus is currently an evening girl. She will not be shining in the west after sunset, and she reaches her widest apparent distance from the sun a few days later. So she did not RSVP to this morning parade. She has her own plans. She's coming late, like 3 days later. And for those of us in the Midwest, the best chance to see this party of a planetary gathering will be during roughly 1 hour before sunrise with a very clear view of the eastern horizon. If you're like, Heather, I'm already going to be in traffic at work. So, good news for you is that this isn't limited to August 12th. The planets will be in similar positions ongoing for the week on the mornings like surrounding it. So if it's cloudy tomorrow, or you're stuck in traffic, or you're already in the office, or you're still sleeping, you have not missed the 6 minute cosmic window that will never happen again. The sky is not being Ticketmaster. You will have another chance to see it this week. Now, astrologically, having this many planets visible at one time can certainly look impressive, but a visual like planet parade is not automatically one giant astrological conjunction like some people on the internet are saying it is. So, a conjunction means planets are occupying the same area of a zodiac from our perspective. These planets are scattered across one large portion of the sky. So, in a conjunction, think of it as they're all attending the same party, but some of them are in the kitchen, some of them are outside taking a smoke break, and Neptune's the emo kid hiding in the locked bathroom because apparently you need a telescope to find him. At approximately 12:36 p.m. Central Time, the moon becomes officially new at 20 degrees of Leo. So, several minutes later, the eclipse is at its greatest point. But here is the disappointing local tea. We will not be able to see the solar eclipse here in St. Louis or in the Midwest. The moon's shadow will travel across a lot of northern Russia, Greenland, Iceland, northern Spain, and the Balearic Islands, and a tiny portion of Portugal. But selected parts of the northern and eastern United States will see a small partial eclipse, but the Midwest states, Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, you're outside of the viewing area. I'm sorry. So, if you're in any of those Midwest states, do not go stand out at lunchtime and look directly at the sun and wondering why nothing is happening. Because, first of all, nothing will happen. And second, you should not be staring at the sun in the first place. So, luckily for us, NASA will be streaming the eclipse, which is going to be our best option to view it, unless somebody wants to buy me a last minute plane ticket to Spain, which would be fine. But within the path of totality, the moon will completely cover the sun for a maximum of about 2 minutes and 18 seconds. So, if you've ever seen an eclipse before, it will be like nighttime. The sky will get dark, like it'll get colder, the brighter stars and planets can appear, and the sun's outer atmosphere, the corona, will become visible around like the black shape of the moon. So it looks like a ring of fire in the sky, basically. So imagine a Spanish sunset, except someone has like removed the center of the sun. So very normal, nothing to see here. And although we understand the geometry now, like imagine watching like that happen without knowing the moon was about to move in front of the sun. So it's back in the day, you're just minding your own business, it's the middle of the day, and then like the animals start getting quiet, birds start behaving weirdly, it gets cold, like it gets shadowy, and then something begins like eating the sun. So obviously, ancient people had questions, and usually the answer was that somebody powerful was probably going to die. So in ancient Mesopotamia, celestial events were not treated as personal horoscopes by any means. The average person was not asking what the eclipse meant for their situationship, okay? Astrology was very political. So the sky was believed to contain warnings about kingdoms, wars, harvests, epidemics, and most importantly, the king. So, but the Assyrians developed a solution that was both extremely clever and horrifying. So, if court astrologers determined that an eclipse predicted danger for the king, they could appoint a substitute king. So, a real man would be dressed in royal clothing, placed on the throne, give him a queen. Meanwhile, the actual king is being low key, away from the public view, and is temporarily living under another identity. So the logic was that the gods had announced something terrible was going to happen to the king. Fine, here is the king. The omen can strike him instead. So, unfortunately, this was not some harmless theatrical performance where everyone changed clothes again after the eclipse and laughed about it. So, once the period of danger had passed, the substitute king and queen could be killed, supposedly carrying the doomed fate with them. So then the real king returned, purified, and conveniently is still alive. So the ancient equivalent of responding to a threatening letter by changing your name in the company directory and then letting the new intern answer your phone, that's basically what it is. And there is even a story about this plan like backfiring. So King Era Emmett of Sin, pronunciation question mark, supposedly just grabbed his gardener and put him on the throne as his substitute during an eclipse. But while the gardener was acting as king, King Era died after drinking soup that was too hot, which is crazy. But so the substitute king survived and simply remained king after that. Imagine that. Imagine being like the king, you're the king's gardener. He's like, hey, come be king for a day, but we're going to kill you later. And then he dies from eating soup. Crazy. But that's not just an omen, that's like a hostile promotion. So when modern astrologers describe August 12th eclipse as being connected to Leo themes, so like visibility, leadership, performance, pride, creativity, and power, the symbolism is not completely disconnected from older astrological concerns. Leo has long carried associations with royalty and the sun, but our modern interpretation is much more personal, and we talk about identity and confidence and creative expression and being seen. And the ancient interpretation was basically hide the king and substitute him out with a gardener. So, once the eclipse is over and the sky becomes dark again, the Perseids meteor shower takes over. And unlike the eclipse, this part will be visible from the Midwest. So, the Perseids happen every year when the Earth passes through debris left behind by the comet Swift-Tuttle. Swift-Tuttle takes about 133 years to orbit the sun, and it last passed through the inner solar system in 1992 and is not expected to return until 2125. So it's important to see it, but the comet it comes from itself is enormous. Its nucleus is estimated to be approximately like 16 miles across and more than twice the size of the meteor that caused the extinction of the dinosaurs. So I'm not fear mongering. Just to be clear, Swift-Tuttle is not coming to hit us on August 12th. We are simply passing through dust and small pieces it left behind during earlier trips around the sun. So these particles enter Earth's atmosphere at roughly 37 miles per hour, and they're tiny, but at those speeds, they can create a big streak of light or occasional fireballs. Because the meteors appear to radiate from the direction of the constellation Perseus, they then became known as the Perseids. But humans have been watching them for a long time, long before we knew about Swift-Tuttle. And when I tell you this, it's gonna be crazy because it's just like I can't even believe this was so long ago. So the earliest known written observation of the Perseids comet meteor shower comes from China in the year 3036. So when astronomers recorded more than 100 meteors flying through the morning sky, it was like a whole thing. In Europe, the shower eventually became associated with St. Lawrence, whose feast day is August 10th. And according to Christian tradition, Lawrence was executed in Rome in the year 258 by being roasted alive on an iron grid loin. So a giant grill. So although some historians question whether that was actually how he died, the grilling the saint version became the most famous one. And legend claims that while being tortured, Lawrence told his executioners that he was finished cooking on one side and should be turned over. So this is supposedly why St. Lawrence became the patron saint of cooks and comedians. And honestly, that's an incredible career trajectory for a martyr. But because the Perseids appear around the anniversary of his death, the meteors became known in parts of Europe as the Tears of St. Lawrence. So, one culture looked at the Perseids and saw debris connected to the Greek hero Perseus, another saw remains of murdered saints, barbecue, and now we are going to dive through the dusty trail of a 16-mile wide comet. So, each explanation is somehow more dramatic than the last. So, unlike the Six Planet Parade, the excitement surrounding the 2026 Perseids is not completely based on social media and marketing, believe it or not. So, this year, the shower peaks during a new moon. So, since the moon will not be lighting the night sky, even fainter and smaller meteors will be easier to see, especially if you can get away from city lights. So, under perfect dark conditions, observers may see around 50 to 100 meteors per hour near the peak. That number assumes an extremely dark location, clear skies, high, being up high, and obviously an unobstructed view. So, you probably will not actually count 100 meteors while standing under a streetlight in mid county, but the best viewing will be late August 12th through early morning of August 13th. So, if you're still going to bed but you're an early riser, you still might catch the end of it. So, you can begin watching once it's fully dark, but conditions generally improve after midnight as Perseus rises higher in the northeastern sky. So, you don't need binoculars or a telescope for this one. Those actually limit how much of the sky you can see. So, again, find the darkest area you can, put your phone away, turn off all the light, turn off your car lights, try to get away from light pollution, and give your eyes about 30 minutes to adjust. And then, although meteors appear to originate near Perseus, they can streak apart any cross of the sky. So don't spend 3 hours staring at one constellation like you're waiting for it to confess something. Like, look all over. So basically, August 12th is not for unrelated cosmic emergencies. It's a wide grouping of planets visible before dawn. Then it's the new moon passing directly between Earth and the sun, which creates a total solar eclipse along the narrow path across the planet. And because that moon remains invisible after sunset, it creates a great viewing conditions for the Earth to pass through the debris of Comet Swift-Tuttle. Then the events are connected, but not because the universe specifically selected August 12th as like a supernatural deadline. They're all connected through orbital geometry, science, and yet those stories that we have placed around them are the most interesting things, almost as interesting as the events themselves. The planets become like a secret meaning. The eclipse becomes a warning that a king might die, and then in some stories, the meteor shower becomes the severed head of Medusa, tears of a saint, burning embers, or ancient comet dust. So the sky does what it does, and we're the only ones who keep just turning it into all these spirituality, like mystic themes. And honestly, Thank God, because the Earth passes through debris at a predictable point in this orbit is accurate, but saying a martyr comedian is crying fire while his king hides from the moon, that's a much better story. So here's your agenda for August 12th. Get up early if you want to hunt for planets. Watch the eclipse online at lunchtime, and then after midnight, go outside and look for the tears of St. Lawrence. But just remember, if an astrologer tells you this eclipse requires somebody to take your place and absorb your bad fortune, do not volunteer. Don't be the gardener. Thank you so much for listening. And if you watch the Perseids, let me know how many meteors and what you think humans would have called them if nobody had ever explained what a meteor actually was. Because honestly, I think that's like the eclipse, that's probably something back in ancient times people were like, what the hell is happening? But thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little bonus episode. Obviously, I couldn't not talk about one of the major astrological events happening this month. But until next time, stay curious, stay delusional, and keep looking up.